Hello guys, welcome back. We have a patch update today. Got the patch notes here. 26.2.2. Now, some of you may know that this patch was made with the support of some content creators, and actually I was one of those content creators, so I actually do already know the changes, so it's not going to be completely fresh unless they've changed something since we talked about it. It was me and a bunch of other creators in the creator program Discord. They were asking for advice on it, and a lot of people gave their opinions, and we came to a conclusion on some stuff that they wanted to do for this patch, and let's take a look. The patch was supposed to happen tomorrow, but there was some problem with the build, so it was delayed one day, but we have it here. Following cards have been adjusted. Simple brand, old brand and enemy deal 2, now it's deal 1. Dev comment is Demon Hunter is one of the few power outliers in this meta with several competitive archetypes. Simple brand, spell Demon Hunter is a standout within the class in both power and negative play experiences. This change is intended to significantly reduce the power and prevalence of that card. Yeah, this is deleting the card, which I'm all for because it was really not a fun experience to play. It felt like you're a bit trapped. You go wide, you get punished. You go tall, you get punished by this. Don't play anything, you get punished. It just didn't feel very good to play against, so happy to see this being changed. I don't imagine it's going to see any play anymore. It's just really not very efficient anymore for dealing face damage, which is a good thing. I mean, they could have made it 1 mana, but I'm pretty sure they just wanted the card to be deleted, and I think a lot of us do too. Next we got Fell Scale Evoker. Now it's got 3 attack instead of 5. This is like a smaller nerf to it because the deck was doing really well. And it's more like a preemptive nerf maybe this one, because if you nerf absolutely everything in the meta and you just leave a deck that was already doing well completely fine as it was before, maybe it's going to be a bit too strong. But this is quite a light nerf. I think some people were fearful when this was announced as a nerf target that the mana cost was going to change. But changing attack to 3 from 5, it's still going to do summon the demon for you. It's still kind of got a lot of stats. It's just that if you deal with the big demon, you're not suddenly losing your board or dying to the actual Evoker itself. So I think it's a good change, and I think it's still going to be a good card. It's just not going to be quite as ridiculous as it was before, but still think it's good. What have they said here? This is a standout card in Big Demon Hunter archetype. Its powerful effect makes it one of the strongest cards in the deck. Doesn't also need to be a threat in its own right. We think it's really cool that Big Demon Hunter has finally become a competitive archetype, and we expect the archetype to will continue to see play after this slight adjustment. Yeah. Well, I agree. That's pretty much what I just said, so yeah. Light touch to it, I think. Predation. This is a kind of a big change. So old 3 mana deal 3, now it's 2 mana deal 2. Lady Steno Predation combo has been used across many Demon Hunter archetypes for a long time. This change is intended to be a small adjustment across the entire class. So I think they wanted to nerf Demon Hunter as a whole. And there's very many archetypes of Demon Hunter, and they mostly have one thing in common, is that they all have Steno Predation. You could nerf all their individual aspects, or you could try and do a slight nerf to something that they all use in an attempt to lower the power level. We saw that already with Construct Quarter in DK. It was a card that was seeing a play in all the classes. It wasn't the strongest of cards, and I don't think this is either the strongest card in Demon Hunter, but the intention was to lower the power level slightly by nerfing a card that they all use. Plus, I mean, if you saw my other video about Steno as a potential nerf target, I think this combo is really old, over a year old now, and I don't think they want all the old stuff to just see play for the rest of the year. So this is change intending to hold them back. Is it good anymore? Predation for 2 mana, deal 2, cost 0. I'm not sure actually. It is significantly weaker, and Steno might just be not worth it in certain Demon Hunter archetypes now, where it was already kind of mediocre of a card. I think this might change it so that you don't want to run it. Particularly like big Demon Hunter, I would say, probably wants to drop the Steno Predation package and go for maybe the Crush Claw to draw their Nagas instead. That already saw a bit of success, so it's probably going to push out the other stuff within the archetype now. Next, Battlefield Necromancer, old 3, now 2 on the health. This card was a bit snowbally, a bit ridiculous. It felt a bit hopeless if you're an early board deck. If they got one drop into this, it kind of just snowballed a bit too quickly. And now you have at least a chance of being able to kill the 2/2 once you get through the taunt. This might not seem impactful to some of you. You might be thinking like, well, you have to get through the taunt first and then kill it. And that might not be possible a lot of the time. But there are a lot of instances where you can kill the taunt and then you have 2 damage available. But sinking 2 into this doesn't actually do anything because they're going to have a taunt on the next turn. And you just didn't really achieve much by doing it. So often, when you don't quite have enough damage, the best players just go face. And there's going to be quite a few scenarios where now you can kill it. So I like this change. The card was a bit too snowbally. I think it's still going to be good, for sure. It's just a lot easier to answer. And there's a variety of deal 2 removals in the game which can hit it as well now. And a lot of AoEs as well. Next, Blight Fang is getting a change. Both these Death Knight cards were buffed last expansion, which was necessary when the class was struggling. However, our current balance philosophy is that balance changes are fluid adjustments over time, not decisions set in stone. Unholy Decay is now the strongest deck, so it needs to be toned back down. We're not reverting the prior buffs, but trying different adjustments to weaken it slightly, particularly in its matchup versus other aggro decks. The deck is disproportionately powerful. Yeah. 4 mana now, so it's kind of a big... It's obviously worse than the 3 mana 3/3 version of it that it was originally. It was kind of a weird buff to begin with, along with this one actually, because these two are like some of the strongest cards that Unholy Decay had, and then you buffed them further. It's not something they haven't done in the past. If you look at like Thunderhead from quite a few years ago, that again was really one of the stronger cards, and they still buffed it. But how good is this card now? Yeah, it's not that good anymore, I think. 4 mana is a lot. It's a powerful effect, but it's one which was only particularly great against other board-based decks. When it was a 3 mana 3/4, it was like good enough that even in non-board-based matchups, you could find some use out of it. But I think the fact that it's 4 mana now is just going to be a bit of a liability most of the time. And maybe that's a fine thing, because this was a kind of a feels bad card to play against, because you randomly got punished. Unholy Decay spreads wide really well with like the spiders, the 4 mana spiders and things like that. And if you're a board-based deck, the way you counter people going wide is to go wide yourself, so you get as many value trades as you can to stop them overwhelming you on the board. But the Blight Fang just megally punished that, so... when they randomly had the Blight Fang and you get punished for value trading, it felt really not great. So maybe this pushes this card out of the deck. I can see that being the case. And then probably feels a bit better to play against Unholy Decay, and it's not like a random flip where they have the Blight Fang or not. I don't think this is like mega necessary change, but some people were suggesting it. And I didn't really disagree. High Cultist Basilisk has been reverted. The Dev Common Aggro Priest is in a good spot right now at all levels of play, but especially at lower levels. This reversion, where prior buff is intended to be a small adjustment to put back in line with other decks. We expect this deck and this card in it to remain competitive. Yeah, I think that's fair. This card was like not needed to be buffed. It's just like ridiculously strong. It will still see play, I think. It'll still be good. But the window for it to be good will be a bit later in the game, slightly. There were times when it's 4 mana, and your opponent plays a Reborn 3-drop. And you're like, I can kill it. Take some damage, maybe, from the Death Rattle. But if they have this, you just get mega, mega punished for doing that. There's always a bit feels bad. But now there's no danger, at least, on turn 4, of them rezzing them immediately. So it gives you a bit more room to actually remove the Undead Priest stuff. But I imagine it's still going to be a good card. It was a case of like a card that probably didn't need to be buffed again. Alright, now the big one. For Druid, Anubrakan. Gain 8 armor before. Now it's gain 5 armor, which is a significant nerf. Now, this might leave Druid in a bit of a bad spot, at least for the armor Druid decks, because they were so reliant on this card. All their cards kind of ramped towards it, tutored it, tried to abuse Anubrakan plus Underking plus Zok as their main big tempo swing, and it was often a bit too strong. You just kind of felt like, oh, they just summoned 30 plus health of Taunt and a load of stats onto the board, and I'm sat here just can't do anything about it. Short term, this might hurt Druid quite a bit, this nerf, if it kind of kills the deck. But long term throughout the year, I think this was going to be a problem card. It's going to keep popping up, sorry. So I'm kind of glad it's getting changed. It's kind of stupid, I think, to play against. It's fun to do it sometimes when you play the card yourself, but I think it'll get a bit tiresome throughout the year, and it's just going to cause some problems with future releases of cards, I'm sure. So the change to 5 armor, you lose the 3 initial armor, and this is very significant because if you don't have any setup before, which is often the case, because usually the turns prior you have played Summer Flower Child, you're only going to gain 5, and then you can't play Underking. And if you can't play Underking, you can't then play Zok afterwards or whatever. So you need a setup turn. Even if this was gain 7, if you played Underking, you can't play Zok afterwards, which was something I suggested. Like, it needs to be 7, and if you wanted it to be harsher, you go down to 5. But the reason I said 5 instead of 4 to them was because when you have the 1-drop that gains armor for your hero power, that goes up to gain 3 armor after the first 1-drop's been played. So at least you can combo on turn 10 with an upgraded hero power, a Anubrakan, and get to that 8 mana, to the 8 armor threshold, which is important to be able to go Underking plus Zok. So the gain 5 on this basically just requires you to have a setup turn. That's either playing Chitinous Plating to get up to 9, or it requires having an upgraded hero power and extra mana, which is a big deal, very big deal. It also matters against control decks, because often you'd try and get the Jailer down, and the Jailer is very expensive, so even with a setup turn going up to like 8 or 9 armor, might not be enough to go Underking plus Jailer. For example, on the same turn, we'll go Jailer plus what's his face, Tony. So not just the aggressors matchups that are affected by this, but the slower ones too. Suddenly it's a bit easier if you're a slower deck to try and get some counterplay by keeping the Druid's armor total a bit low. Maybe some people will be upset about this because Druids might be left a bit stranded. They have some other decks, Big Druid for example, or Drum Circle Druids are viable. They can go in that direction instead, but certainly the main archetypes of Druid are going to be really hit by this very hard, and I think it might make that deck unplayable. It's just my guess, because just having to do a setup turn, particularly against aggressive decks, is just not very viable. Alright, next we got Stenographer getting a change. Miracle Rogue is not a power outlier at most levels of play, but it remains strong and prevalent at higher levels of play. This is a minor adjustment to reflect its current power level and its potential power level after the adjustments to the other cards changed in the patch. I think this change was made because we don't want to be in a situation where Miracle Rogue's the best deck after nerfs again for like the 4th time in a year, or like the 4th meta, and metas are lasting like months. While it's not the best deck now, it was getting held back quite a bit by Spell Demon Hunter, and Spell Demon Hunter should be disappearing, so they're also being held back maybe from Unholy Demon Hunter as well. So if those decks get nerfed and aren't as prevalent in the meta, there's room for Miracle Rogue to be the top deck again, and I think it'd be such a shame if we're just faced with a Miracle Rogue meta yet again. So the targets for the nerf really were the Stenographer or the location. And there were some changes for the location suggested, but I think ultimately people settled on this one instead because this really accelerated some of the blowout turns that the Rogue could do. The Stenographer, and particularly against aggro decks, it was very, very good. So let's change this to 6 from 6 to 7. It's going to slow down Rogue quite a bit. I think it's just a bit harder to achieve the crazy turn by getting this to 0. Because once this is 0, like it unlocks so many things like Shadow Steps on it and things like that. But if you make it a bit harder to make this 0, then maybe it happens a bit later in the game. And it's not so strong as a deck, hopefully. I mean, personally, I don't like the deck. I think it's very stupid. And causes bad play experiences, let's say. So hopefully it's not super prevalent, but it wasn't like a nerf intended to completely destroy Rogue. We've got some buffs as well. Symphony of Sins. Now, a lot of people expecting this to be discovering any movement on the first one, but they made it even stronger actually. They've decided to make it 5 mana, which is huge, I think, for this card. None of the things that you get are changing. 5 mana, and you can get like a 6/6 Taunt Reborn. Pretty good. All the other effects very, very good. Get things rolling a lot quickly, and perhaps this change means that Warlock's not all in on the slime stuff. Hopefully. Warlocks have been a bit savage this expansion, so hopefully this makes it a bit stronger. I expect it's going to be quite a good card now. Some people would have wanted the other change, but I think the other change would have been weaker than this one. Mana is just king in Hearthstone, really. Another big one. From the Depths has been changed to 3 mana, but it's not complete revert because they're only getting reduced by 2 instead of 3. Before, it was kind of a stupid gameplay experience for them to From the Depths on 3 and then Nelly you on 4. That was with old Nelly when Mr. Smite was around. But I think even with new Nelly, that would probably still feel a bit stupid. You got like Ramonia in the game as well as another potential target. But currently warrior decks are lacking like, especially slower warrior decks are lacking like early plays that are decent. So making this 3 mana is going to unlock the curve quite a bit for them. Discount by 2. It's only 6 mana cards that are playable on curve. You can kind of think of this similar to Harpoon Gun in Hunter. When Harpoon Gun reduced by 3, it was mega stupid. But when it reduced by 2, it was a fine card, I think. And not too broken. So this is probably just going to be a fine card now. And decent for Warrior. And maybe it's going to open up Warrior for some new archetypes, I'm hoping. Excited to play with that one. Also getting a buff for Chorus Rift. Now some people think this is going to go to 2 mana, but they just didn't want to do that. Instead they wanted to give it a slight buff, and it's now +3/+3. It's still 3 mana, so a bit awkward for the curve, but I mean it's quite a sizable buff now. And it means replaying the Chorus Rift is a bit better. Like before, you just didn't really want to replay this one. You wanted to use this one to replay your other ones a lot of the time, but maybe with this change, you'll suddenly enjoy doing that a bit more. And if you like include a lot of 4-drops in your deck, potentially this on 3 into the buffed 4-drop on 4 is a lot better curve than it was before. I don't think they want to overbuff the Rifts, particularly with the From the Depths as well being changed. Maybe combined Warriors suddenly looking pretty decent, along with all the other nerfs as well. Demolition Renovator's now got tradable. I still don't think this is going to be that good. It's still 4 mana, which is a problem. If it was 3 mana and tradable, sure, it would be good. Obviously with stat adjustments, but I don't know, 4 mana still kind of meh. I don't know if locations are as prevalent as they were when this card was released, but it certainly makes it less of a feels bad option to include this card in your deck. Rotten Apple Bomb. This is like a bit of a random buff. It wasn't suggested by the creators, this one. It was by the dev team. But I think the idea, they wanted to give an option for control decks. Now it's like 6 health on Taunt and restore 6 instead of 5 health restore 4. I think this is maybe a potentially okay option for things like Control Priests, because they care about undead. They have undead synergies. And maybe also Warlock, because they have also undead synergies that they can revive this and they care about healing and things like that. I think it might be playable now. It's a bit of a random buff, but I can see it finding a home in a couple of decks. Like, it's not bad stats on it anymore. 6 health. Restore 6 is also quite a lot. Like, you can compare this a bit to Light Shower Elemental, which was a 6/6 restore 8, but for 6 mana. So, knock off a mana, knock off 2 healing, knock off some attack. But it's got undead synergy. So it might be a kind of decent card now, in a couple of decks. Also reverting Panda and Importer, I think they just kind of forgot to do this come rotation, but they're doing it now. This is not a standard card, but you guys in Wild can enjoy it. Got nerfed because of me, actually. Turtle Rogue. Completely broken. But yeah. Getting reverted now. That's all the buffs. There's some obviously BG's buffs. I'm not going to go through those. I don't know if there's any bug fixes. Any couple. Moved Heroic Brawl to next week. Okay, that's it. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you guys in the next one.